Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life's Nuggets with Susan and Patricia. I am Patricia, and I'm a mindset coach.
And I am Susan, and I'm a nutritionist.
So, we are here today to talk about self-love and self-care.
A big one today.
Really big one, Susan. And just so everybody knows, this is such a big topic. Like when we think about loving ourselves and having compassion for ourselves and what that does for us,
Mm.
it's such a big topic because there's so many different facets of it that we've decided to actually make it a series. So we're going to have a few of them. So really excited about this because this is a very, very important topic.
Well, I think especially today, with a lot of the information that's out there, I think it's hopefully this will clarify for people the nuance and the difference between them, because as we're going to say, there is a very big difference in them both. And to help people understand that, and then also sort of through, as we said, this series is to help them understand, okay, what can I actually do for myself without it being seen as selfish or guilty or, whatever baggage it is that we carry when we think that we shouldn't be doing that. Right. And I
Oh
think
my
that's what's
gosh.
going to be a lot of fun to unpack and chat
I,
about.
I love that you just said that. Because I was thinking of that earlier, and there are a lot of people out there. When I've been working with people, and I'm sure you've had the same thing happening in your work, where people are, I can't do that. I
Mm.
can't give myself this, or I can't do that. I can't, let people know that I'm proud of what I'm doing because it comes across as selfish. It comes across as narcissistic.
Mhm.
There's guilt in that.
Mm.
And people have to be really careful about that. I mean, where is that coming from? Because we need to learn to celebrate ourselves. And just
Mm.
because we celebrate ourselves and love ourselves, and it doesn't mean that we are all those things that we think that we are.
And again, I do think sometimes it does come down partly to what we hear around us, right? As you just said, because if you were to go in and say, hey, I did an amazing job, and sort of just keep going on about it, or people will see that as being, well, she's self-absorbed or something, and you might just be super happy because it has taken you a really long time to get that result. And I think people are too quick to judge the reaction and don't realize all the work that may have gone behind it, right? And so they misinterpret that sort of elation and happiness and sort of, hey, I just want to let everybody know what I've been able to do. And it's okay if you don't do that either, right? We're not saying that people have to do one thing or another, but I think it kind of that those two things kind of tie into each other, right?
Susan, do you think, because when you were saying that, I was thinking, you know what? I think men are better at that than
100%, and nobody judges them.
no, and they'll like high five, let's go for beers,
That's right.
celebrate your successes, but
Yeah.
women not so much.
We tend to keep it quiet because and it's like you do see these things. If women, these sort of posts, and it's starting to change, but if women are assertive in the work world, sometimes they're considered difficult, right? If a man's assertive, it means that he knows what he wants, right? And you see these comparisons, and I think as women, sort of thinking of what we're talking about today, the more we actually do have that relationship with ourselves, right? That we really do love ourselves truly for who we are, then I think we're more ready to put that out there without it having to be pushy or loud, but just who we are, right? As personalities, as somebody's very artistic, whatever it may be. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. The more
But I think
yeah.
it comes from there, though. It really does. If you don't love yourself, flaws as well, like it's hard. And I think, unfortunately, it comes with age, I think. Maybe. I don't know. I'm confused on this one, to be absolutely honest. I wish there were certain things I could tell myself 20 years ago, like a lot of us do. And I've often wondered, is it age that means that now I'm feel so much more comfortable with just who I am and what I do and all of that, or is it that I have learned to love myself regardless of what other people may think, do, see, judge, whatever? I don't know. Question to
I don't
you.
know why. I don't know why. But that's a really good thing. And maybe it's a combination of um age. You have more life experience, you have more perspective. Um, you're learning the value of what you bring to the table.
Mm.
I think what's sad about that is why can't we have that when we're younger? And always have that. You can see some young people who are just so confident and they're
Mm.
loving themselves. And I just like, wow, that is just amazing.
But
Um,
see, that, sorry to interrupt, is that confidence or is that self-love? Right? I don't know.
the
Can be
same,
both. Yeah.
right? Like, because if I love myself, I should be confident.
That's very true, actually. Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah. Um, So, and then there's that whole idea of self-care. But
Yeah.
like we mentioned earlier, like those two are very different things. Because I think a lot of people, I hear a lot of self-care. I use the word self-care a lot. We do need to take care of ourselves. We need to take time out. We need to look after our physical body. We need to deal with our stress. We need to do all of those things.
It's a lot. Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, they can practice self-care without actually having self-love. Because
Yes.
self-love is at a much deeper level. It's actually accepting yourself for who you are, for your values, the very parts of you. And like you said earlier, the good and the bad parts,
Mm.
but really valuing yourself. And when you have self-love, you are not as defensive as you.
Yeah, I'd agree. You know what? It makes me think a lot about that post that you did about boundaries, right? I think as well, when you have more self-love, kind of tying to what you said about the confidence, you are more comfortable with putting up those boundaries. And so it's not saying, I don't want people near me, or it's not saying that, I'm more important. It's just saying, actually, for now, this is not a good thing for me. I can help you, but it's that give and take, right, in relationships. And I think that does come partly from self-love, because when you have that, you understand what you are worth and what you need. And if the people in front of you, you start to understand that they're not seeing that, then why would you just kind of lay down flat and let them kind of dictate or take time from you that you know is not going to be reciprocated or valued, or right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like as an example, so, and I know we've talked about this, when I was in my 20s, I was in an abusive relationship. But because I didn't have that core sense of self to begin with,
Mm.
I got into that relationship, and it's with perspective and looking backwards. If I'd had self-love and that confidence that comes along with self-love, like some of that stuff that had happened wouldn't have happened at all. Like it wouldn't have been an issue because it just, I would have walked away. And
Because you had your boundaries, right? You'd have been like, no, like I can go this far. Not like, no, this is not acceptable to me.
yeah,
Right? Yeah, 100%.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And perspective, again, I'm a big person on perspective. When you
It's
look
very
back,
helpful.
but like when I'm like when you're sitting in certain situations and I'm, some explosion happened in the relationship. When you're looking from the outside in, it was like, okay, that was the most ridiculous thing that ever happened. There was so much more going on there.
Yeah.
If I'd had that self-love, if I'd had that confidence, that would have never been an issue. I would have never engaged in that because there's that knowingness that you are worthy, and
Mm.
put things in perspective, put it in proportion, and recognize that that other person is actually a damaged individual as well.
Mm.
And they're dealing with their stuff, to my detriment, but it was their stuff that they were dealing with, and my stuff was coming to the fore. So self-love, yeah, it's so
It's
important.
hard. And it takes, oh my gosh, does it take time and energy? And I'm not sure you ever actually, I don't know. Do you ever get there 100%? I think does it go in phases? I'm not sure, but I think it is a hard thing to do, right? As you said, self-care is easy in some ways. You
Yeah,
know, self-care, accepting, because we're all flawed, right? Accepting that we are flawed and that we may not, it's not even a question of being perfect, but we may not be that person to everybody, that we do have things that, you know, I don't know, we need to work on. We may not be super organized, or we may not be um fitted to work in certain environments because we're just not wired that way, right?
right.
And sometimes it's really hard to accept that and to love ourselves and go, actually, okay, now let me work with my strengths. You know, I was reading an interesting article the other day, and they were talking with regards to sports, which kind of, you'll get that, it ties into this. And they were saying, you know, somebody who wants to be an athlete and a swimmer, if you are small and quite short, it's going to be really hard for you to achieve the same sort of greatness and speed and things that, let's say, Michael Phelps did, because the guy's like 2 foot, 6 foot, I don't know how much. So,
Enormous.
right. So physically, biologically, he already had a huge advantage, right? So to accept what can be seen as flaws and to work to your advantages. But they were saying, like, Michael Phelps would make a terrible long distance runner because he's just so big. And it would be really hard for him to do that. And you know what they said? I mean, I read that. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'd never thought about it that way. And so sort of accepting your flaws and working to your strengths and learning to love yourself that way, I think is really, am I relating this in that way?
Oh, totally. I absolutely love that analogy, but that's,
I'd never thought of that. You know, I swim just for fun. I'm not doing it, but it was, and I think it was a swimming article I was reading that said that. And I was like, oh my gosh, but that applies to just about anything, right?
mhm,
I'm not very business orientated. I left the business world for very good reasons 20, 30 years ago. I knew it wasn't a right fit fundamentally, I think, and it was probably the best thing I ever did. But yeah, I see my daughter is thriving in it and she loves it because her personality works with it. And that's where I think, okay, that's where part of the self-love comes into, right? Is really working to that and accepting that we may be short, tall, and but not meant to do certain things. We just weren't. However much we might want to,
yeah.
we're
I
not
read
meant.
a book by Martha Beck years ago called Follow Your North Star, and it
to.
touches on this. I don't know if you've ever read that book.
No, but I'd love to.
It's an amazing book, and it's an old book. But she's, very educated, and I read it a long time ago, so I don't remember all the details, but I remember her making this example of she was really, really educated and she was trying to learn Chinese, the language. And for some reason, because she was going to teach or she was going to do whatever, and it didn't matter how
How?
much she studied. It didn't matter how incredible the rest of her grades were. It didn't matter how much she was exceeding in all
Mm,
these different areas. She could not freaking get the language.
yeah.
And she said she finally had this aha moment
But maybe it's
that
just not me.
that was just not her thing. But that didn't mean just because she failed, didn't mean that she was bad, that there was something wrong with her, that she didn't have the smarts. It just meant that that is not her thing.
Yeah.
And that has really made a big difference for me, where I've come across things and it's just like, you
It,
know,
I'm
some things
not
that
going to go
number,
there.
I'm not bad with numbers, but there's some parts that I just like, um,
I hear you 100%
it's
on that.
just like,
Yep.
bond prices go up and interest go down. Whatever that is, that makes no sense to me. And it's like, okay, that's not a reflection of who I am as a person. It means that that is not my key. My area of expertise, but my area of expertise can be somewhat something else. And
That's it.
valuing what you bring to the table. Because that's what the people around you are looking for. We can't all be the same in this box.
Can
Everybody
it,
has
how
their piece.
boring would that be? And
Oh,
it's right, it does all come back to that self-love. There are certain things, and I think, I don't know, again, age, time, environment, nature, nurture, not sure. But I think once you start getting there, there's a certain contentment as well. There's
yeah.
no more trying to keep up with the Joneses. There's no more comparison. There's no more, or very much less, maybe. Let's be realistic, much less.
Yeah.
And it's no longer, yeah, just comparing ourselves to everybody and everything else. It's like, look, we are all unique, we are all different, and why don't we help each other and support each other in our strengths and just say, okay, right, well, that person's not brilliant at this. You know, like even when we work together and we do things, there are things that I know that you're much better at doing than me, and I'm like, hey, Patricia, please, let's do I'll let you do that, right? It's like, it's
Vice
my
versa.
thing.
Yeah. This is why it works because we each have different strengths that we can bring to the table.
This is it. And that I definitely think is part of self-love, right? It's understanding that and working with it, and then not criticizing ourselves because we are not 6 foot tall like Michael Phelps. We're like maybe 5'3", right? A simple analogy, but right, just accepting it and like that's who I am, and I'm just gonna go with it.
And you're right. There's such a sense of contentment. You've got better resiliency. You've got better capacity to love others.
Yes.
You have the bandwidth to be available and be present in all sorts of areas in your life. It takes a long time though, and it's something that's constantly you have to work with, and you got to spend time and effort getting to know each other, or
Yeah.
getting to know yourself. I'm sorry, and just allowing yourself and having that compassion that you know what you're pretty bloody great,
Yeah.
and accept it and go on
Go
from
with it.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I 100%.
So this is part one in our series.
100% it is part one, and we will be back with more.
Part two, which I'm not really sure what our topic is, but we've got a whole bunch of ideas.
Oh,
So
yes.
yes. So let's continue to examine the whole idea of self-love and what that means in the bigger world.
Yeah. And
So
if you guys have questions and queries or comments about what you feel, like obviously drop them down below,
yeah,
like down below there. I think that's what people do, right? And you know, if there's other aspects of it that you would like us to chat about, let us know and we're happy to do that.
absolutely. And maybe throw out the question, how do you feel about your self-love? Where are you on that?
Yeah.
We'd love to hear about it, and we will see you again.
Bye-bye.